population of 1 million, a far cry from the 150,000 residents cited in New York's 1900 census. Much of that growth was spurred by the opening of the Queensboro Bridge in 1909. It was the first roadway to connect Manhattan with, as New York Mayor William J. Gaynor called the borough then, the cornfields of Queens. 6 years later, in 1915, New York's IRT subway line expanded its service to Queens, spurring yet another influx of businesses and residents into the borough's diverse neighborhoods. Still, Queens retained a suburban feel. Its tree-lined streets were dotted with houses both posh and modest, 1-, 2-, and 3-family homes, and apartment buildings that ran the gamut from the exclusive to the unprepossessing address in Jackson Heights into which Max and Etta Rickles eventually settled. It was not idyllic. There were restrictive covenants in some neighborhoods that barred people by race or religion and were not struck down until the 1940s, when more Jewish people moved into the neighborhood, including the family of future KISS member Gene Simmons, born Chaim Witz. The black community would have difficulties renting or buying a place in Jackson Heights until the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968. Max Rickles was born Max Raklansky in Kovno, Russia, in 1897 to Joseph and Frances, née Ionis, Raklansky, both natives of Lithuania. In 1903, shortly before war broke out between Tsarist Russia and Japan, amid the ever-present undercurrent of Russia's anti-Semitism, Joseph and Frances decided to emigrate to America, taking with them 6-year-old Max, his 4 brothers, Sam, Harry, Solomon, and Henry, and his sister, Catherine. They trekked to Belgium and, from Antwerp, set sail on the Kroonland, arriving in New York Harbor on October 4, 1903, in the midst of the city's rainiest season on record. Customs officials quickly and unceremoniously changed the family's surname from Raklansky to the more anglicized Rickles. As a youth, Max Rickles worked a series of jobs, eventually landing a steady gig as an insurance salesman. In the early 1920s, he met and fell in love with Yeti Feldman, who was 4 years younger. Everyone called her Etta, or as Don labeled his irrepressible mother, the Jewish Patton. She was born in New York City in 1901 to Harry Feldman, who emigrated from Austria, and Clara Feldman, née Landsberg. She had a sister, Frida. Don's cousin on his grandmother's side of the family, David Landsberg, later co-starred with him on his NBC sitcom, CPO Sharkey. Etta developed into a brash, outgoing, opinionated young woman, traits that would embarrass her son, even at an early age, making him an extremely self-conscious child. I loved her dearly, Don recalled, but the woman was definitely more commanding in her attitude than most. She and the more soft-spoken Max were married on June 24, 1924, when he was 27 and she was 23. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a nondescript 4-story red brick building at 8909 32nd Avenue in Jackson Heights, a mixed community of 45,000 predominantly Jewish, Irish, and Italian residents, located in the northwest corner of Queens. At one time, silent screen stars Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks Sr. lived in the neighborhood. Les Paul and Mary Ford recorded their hit instrumental How High the Moon in their Jackson Heights studio. Don arrived a month short of Max and Etta's 2-year anniversary. A Mother's Day present to me, Etta said. Their apartment was comfortable but nothing fancy, and no different from the thousands of other apartments in the city. It had a dumbwaiter in its kitchen, which thrilled Don, and their building was directly across the street from PS 148, which was not always appreciated by the young boy. Whenever the school bell woke me up, I knew that I was late. Etta Rickles, in later interviews, would say that Jackson Heights was part of Long Island, which was her attempt to make it sound posher than it was. Queens, technically, is located at the western end of Long Island. Don had his own room in the apartment, which he decorated with baseball memorabilia. He was a big fan of the New York Giants, who played in the Polo Grounds in Manhattan in those halcyon days of 3 New York baseball teams, with the Dodgers over in Brooklyn and the Yankees in the Bronx. In 1936, when Don was 10 years old and in the flush of fandom, the Giants, led by future Hall of Famers Carl Hubbell, Mel Ott, and player-manager Bill Terry, won the National League pennant by 5 games over the Chicago Cubs, but lost the World Series to their crosstown rivals, the Yankees, in 6 games. Don's passion for baseball lasted his entire life, but he switched allegiances after the Giants and the Dodgers left New York City in 1957. When he moved to Los Angeles in the 1960s, he rooted for the Dodgers and later became good friends with the team's manager, Tommy Lasorda. Don was a